We have a couple of minutes. Let's go to NBC's chief White House correspondent, Hallie Jackson, who watched this speech. And Hallie, what did you hear that surprised you in this speech?
There was no declaration of a national emergency, Savannah, which wasn't surprising in and of itself. We had heard that from White House sources that we'd talked to, that the president was not likely to bypass Congress to be able to find the money that he wanted for that border wall that he wants by doing so. But what was interesting is that it took him about 25 minutes to tee up to immigration. Once he hit it, though, he hit it hard. And Democrats in the room, as you have been talking about, were not pleased about this. There were audible groans in the chamber when you heard the president reference a migrant caravan at one point, for example. The president tried to build the case for why he wanted a wall, saying it would prevent bad actors, drugs, for example, from coming across the border. Keep in mind, though, that the majority of both foreigners with criminal records and illegal drugs coming over the border are captured, caught at legal ports of entry, places where a wall wouldn't stop that. You also had the president dealing with semantics a bit. He talked about wanting a smart, strategic see-through barrier. In other words, perhaps enhanced fencing, which you could call it. That is something that Democrats may be able to ultimately get on board with, but with 10 days to go until this second shutdown looms, there's still a question of whether they'll be able to find common ground on that.
And the president clearly put a lot of things out there that there might be common ground, AIDS, cancer research. So there's a lot to choose from potentially.
Yeah, and listen, he started his speech, a big chunk of it there, talking about criminal justice reform in the First Step Act, which to date has been one of the biggest pieces of policy that his administration has come out with that has had bipartisan support. So I think it was a notable choice. We'd been told before the speech that he was going to talk about criminal justice reform more than expected. I think it's notable that he led with that. That Alice Johnson moment was another special one, Lester.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.